Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight, the government has collected nearly $1 billion in VAT. We talk with the state minister for finance.
A local bishop responds to calls for the death penalty to be quashed. That story coming up.
Alfred says he will get the PLP back to where they used to be. That story's coming up straight ahead.
And dentistry in the Bahamas takes another leap forward. Welcome to our news. I'm Kyle Joaquin. Thanks for joining us. Topping news tonight, the government collected almost $1 billion in value-added tax between January 2015, when the tax was implemented, and June of this year. State Minister for Finance Michael Alquitas revealed the information yesterday to a group of accountants. But since then, talk shows and even social media have been abuzz with people asking a long list of questions. Well, today, we sat down with Alquitas to get a clearer explanation of what really is happening with the money collected from VAT.
And so it's all accounted for. So it's not that you have a separate item and you say, okay, we can take X amount of VAT money and put it directly on the debt. It goes to the debt, but it goes through to the debt through the fact that by collecting more revenue, you run less of a deficit. You don't have to borrow as much money to run the government.
$852 million. That's the figure collected over an 18-month period from value-added tax, according to Alquitas. Meanwhile, government debt stands at nearly $7 billion. But for months, there have been questions as to where the VAT money goes and how it is spent. Alquitas has on numerous occasions said it goes to the central government's bank account or the consolidated fund. That's where all tax-generated funds go and is in turn used for the day-to-day running of the government. He said for some reason it's hard for some people to understand, and it's because of that there's really no way to break down how the VAT money is spent.
You don't segregate it and say, okay, VAT money goes for schools, customs duties goes for the police, road traffic goes. You know, some people say that maybe we should do that, but as it stands now, everything goes into a central consolidated fund.
He insists there is no hiding any information regarding VAT, as during the budget debate there is full accounting of government spending.
We go into committee, we go through every line of the budget where it's questioned by the opposition. Every expenditure item is questioned and has to be justified by the minister responsible. We do that live on television. And so, you know, people who say, well, it's not transparent, it's extremely transparent.
He noted the year-to-year decrease in the country's deficit. However, with the additional borrowing of $150 million now required as a result of Hurricane Matthew, Alquitas said a noticeable decrease in the country's debt probably won't be seen until 2017-2018.
Now we're hopeful that the economy will pick up, that going into the new year we'll have more activity. We're hopeful that, for example, the Bahamas will get moving and begin to contribute to the economy, and then we'll begin to see the revenues you know, rise and come back to normalcy.
Well, Catholic Archbishop Patrick Pender has joined other regional bishops in calling for the death penalty to be abolished. But as he takes that position, former Christian Council President Bishop Simeon Hall says he agrees to an extent. Simone Davis tells us more.
In a statement yesterday, Catholic Archbishop Patrick Pender, who's president of the AEC, and 18 other bishops called for changes to be made to the criminal justice system and a different approach to be taken when dealing with offenders. Today, Bishop Hall said although capital punishment has not been carried out since the year 2000, when David Mitchell was hanged for the murder of a German couple, he has been on the defense about the act because he's only witnessed black men hang.
It would seem that in law, we have ended the death penalty since the year 2000. The last person I think was directly a young man. I've been on both sides of the debate for capital punishment.
The mandatory death sentence has been ruled unconstitutional in the Bahamas by the Privy Council.
Bishop Hall says although he agrees with the call for the death penalty to be quashed, he doesn't want to make it any easier for criminals to break the law even more.
And so I understand it. My difficulty, though, I don't want to give any cushion to these depraved persons who seem to have sunk to the level where they commit crime with impunity.
Over the years, many have called for capital punishment to be exercised again in the Bahamas, expressing that the country's murder count has repeatedly been far too high. Hall said although he is against capital punishment, the question still remains whether those who commit murder should receive the death penalty or life in prison.
We should realize that there are some human beings who no longer have the worth to be among other human beings. What do we do with them? Do we put them away for life, or do we put them under the death penalty? And so I know I'm talking two sides, but it is difficult to give any cushion to these who seem to be impervious to everything the church, Kiwanis, the community, the school seeks to do.
Reporting for our news, I'm Simone Davis.
Well, 4 of the men wanted for questioning in relation to recent murders have turned themselves into the Central Detective Unit. They are 26-year-old Lyndhurst Rocco Johnson of Pinewood Gardens, 25-year-old Dwayne Boo Boo Cartwright of Farrington Road, 26-year-old Rashad LaRoda, also of Farrington Road, and 25-year-old Amal Bo Hunter of Majors Alley. Police, however, are still on the hunt for 28-year-old Nathaniel Miller of Nassau Village, 27-year-old Sean Fire Brown of Rupert Dean Lane, and Ramon Razor Sweeting of Coral Harbor. Police have described the men as armed and extremely dangerous and are urging members of the public to contact their nearest police station if they have any information that can lead to an arrest. Well, though he says it was not necessary to push the Progressive Liberal Party's convention back, party leader hopeful Alfred Sayre says, however, the convention is a chance to get the PLP back to its core values. Joseph Sturp reports.
In his bid to become the next leader of the Progressive Liberal Party, Alfred Sayre says he will get the party back to believing in Bahamians and just not the selective few. The PLP candidate for Fort Charlotte says despite the party's convention being postponed, he still has every intention to run for the party's top post. But Sayre says there is one thing that he has learned.
I am in a process, and I say to myself, as leader of the Progressive Liberal Party in the future, I know how I will not conduct the affairs of the party.
Sayre says the PLP started off believing in Bahamians, but now it seems that only a selective few are being remembered, and he won't stand for it.
Why should we continue to condition our people that we can get a government job when we know the public service is already overstaffed? You see, these are the kinds of issues of governance that we have to address, because when I look at the core values of the Progressive Liberal Party, you know what it says? It says government for all and not the privileged few.
One of the biggest issues facing the government, according to Sayre, is the lack of economic growth. And he says if the government is looking to Bahama as a savior, then it is in trouble.
We are on an unsustainable path. GDP for this year is estimated to be $8 billion. The central bank, in its last quarterly report about a month ago, disclosed that the national debt is $7 billion.
Reporting for our news, I'm Giorgio Sturrup.
Thanks, Giorgio. Still to come, residents in Mount Moriah are still fixing their homes more than a month after Hurricane Matthew. Alive hits Grand Bahama, and the Bahamas leading the way in dentistry in the Caribbean. Stay with us.